Alright, so let's talk a little bit more about splitting this guy up. Now, of course, you don't have to split him up. If we just select his body, go into solo mode, you can go in here with your standard brush, turn on Z-add, and then just go in here with your Alt key. Let's turn on lazy mouse, hit L. And if you want to crank up that lazy radius, go to stroke and just play with that radius, and then you can just hold down Alt and just kind of go around your character and start sculpting in the lines. You start sculpting in the face here, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's one way to do it. For a little bit more control, what I'm going to do is start slicing and dicing this guy up. So one slice we didn't make was the feet, and that's okay. So we're going to go over a bunch of different ways we can slice this guy up. So if I go into polyframe here, you're going to see, you can kind of see his Polypaint, but he's all, let's hit Control W. He's all one poly group. Let's see if I can make a bright one. We'll do green. If we hold on Control Shift and we go over here to Slice Curve, we can actually do a slice. And I'm going to go right to the middle of his sock. So his sock isn't selected. It's another subtool. But we have his body selected. I'm using that. If you hit Transparent, you can kind of see where I sliced it through. If I go into solo mode, you're going to see I now have a green and a blue slice. If I turn off his Polypaint, you're going to see those are the only two poly groups I have. So one cool trick you can do is you can go over here to Dynamesh options. Let's do it where you'll find it. Dynamesh, turn on groups, control drag, and now because we had groups turned on, let's do it with white. There we go. Because we had groups turned on, if I hold down Shift, you're going to see we now have two separate little tools in here. They're not subtools, they're just two separate little pieces. If you hold on Control Shift and tap, you'll see you get this piece here. If you do visibility, grow all, you'll see the hotkey for that is Control Shift A. Do Control Shift A, that'll go ahead and grab that. Now the reason why is because when we Dynameshed, it'll Dynamesh the bottom part of the feet. It had a group, so it split it and then it filled the hole. And if we do Control Shift, grab your select rectangle, Control Shift drag to invert visibility, you'll see it did the exact same thing for this up here. So the reason why is when we Control Shift click this, it only selects that poly group. We do Control Shift A, that grows the visibility for this object to anything that's vert welded to it, and it grabs all of it. Same thing for the top. Control Shift, select it. Control Shift A grabs all of it. There we go. Word of the wise, words of warning. If you Dynamesh something with a Polypaint turned off, you will lose that Polypaint. See how we don't have a Polypaint anymore? So let's just undo all the way back. There we go. So we got our Polypaint back. So that's one way to go ahead and do that. Another way you can do that is, let's turn on our polyframe here, and we'll hit Control W. So I'm going to do another Control Shift. We're going to slice it right down that sock line. Again, if you want to go and see where that is, just turn off solo and then turn on transparent. You can see where that transition is going to be. You can also do Control Shift, isolate this one. We'll go ahead and split that into its own subtool. Now if you go into solo mode and Dynamesh, that'll go ahead and just Dynamesh and close those holes. We can select the body, Dynamesh that, close the holes for us. And because we have the Polypaint on the body, turn off transparency, turn off polyframe, it kept it. Now if you Dynamesh with the Polypaint off, it's going to kill your Polypaint. So don't, be careful of that. So we've got his feet as a separate subtool, and they're nice and separated. And what that allows us to do is, for example, let's do it to the, give him some pants. So I'm going to Alt tap his body, and instead of slicing this time, because what's going to end up happening is I hold down Control Shift and go to slice this thing, and it's going to slice. I'm just turning on polyframe here. It's going to slice like through his arms and stuff. You can mask it and do that stuff, but let's try something else. I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to do Mask Lasso, and I'm just going to lasso mask where I want this to be, and I'm going to grab his pants here. And then we need to do a little bit of cleanup, so I'm going to hold down Control and grab Mask Pin, or I guess you could Mask Lasso from the side, but I'll use Mask Pin. And we'll just go ahead and mask this area here, because really all we're looking for is a poly group. So I'm going to turn off his Polypaint. If you want to tighten up this line here, hold down Control Alt and tap his body, or alternatively you can Control tap here, it'll blur, Control Alt tap sharpens. That's all under the masking menu here. Go under masking, you're going to see there's blur and clear and sharpen, all this good stuff. I'm doing that with hotkeys. It's a lot faster. You see we lost a little bit, so I'm going to go back up here and we'll repaint this, and you could paint the whole thing if you wanted to. Go to solo mode here. Okay, so this is where we want our poly group, right? And actually we don't want his feet, so what I'm going to do is we'll do mask curve, and then we'll mask, and then we'll hold down Alt, and that'll unmask everything below that point. There we go, so we got his pants masked out. If I turn off his Polypaint temporarily, hit Control W, you're going to see that makes a poly group here. So now if I Dynamesh with group on, it'll go ahead and make his pants its own separate or its own little self-contained object. So if I hit Control Shift A, it's got a cute little pair of pants. I can Control Tap to mask that, Control Shift to bring everything else back, Control Tap to invert that mask, and now I can just kind of inflate these pants up if I want to. And now I can individually go through and kind of shape and sculpt his pants separately from the rest of his body.